My name is Samantha, and at 37 years old, I won millions in the lottery but stayed silent. When I asked my parents for a place to stay, Mom said, "You're just a guest under our roof. Pay $1,500 a month or sleep in your car." 3 weeks later, she saw me sign the deed for a $980,000 home in cash, paused their accounts, and left. The next morning, 53 missed calls and one secret box under my door. "You're just a guest under our roof. Pay $1,500 a month or sleep in your car." My own mother said that to me, without even looking up from her phone. She didn't see my hands curl into fists under the kitchen table, didn't notice how my jaw tightened so hard I thought my teeth might crack. She just kept scrolling, nails clicking against the screen like a metronome for my humiliation. "I just need a place for a couple of weeks," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. "I, a guest," she repeated, cutting me off like I was a telemarketer. "Guests pay, or they leave." My father sat in his usual spot at the head of the table, eyes fixed on his coffee mug, like maybe the answer to life was written inside. He didn't say a word, not to defend me, not to object, just silence. Across from me, my sister smirked into her cereal, the spoon clinking against the bowl in slow, deliberate taps. The same smirk she'd worn my entire life whenever she saw me getting put in my place. $1,500, my mother said again, sliding a printed list across the table like she was my landlord. It had the exact amount, due dates, even penalties for late payment. She'd actually made a payment schedule for her own daughter. I stared at the paper, then at her. She didn't flinch. "It's not charity," she added. "We have bills. We're not here to make your life easier." And that was the moment I realized. They had no idea. No idea that 3 days ago I had walked into a gas station, handed over $6 for a scratch-off and a coffee, and walked out holding a ticket worth $14.8 million. No idea that while they were nickel and diming me for a bed in the house I grew up in, I could walk into a dealership tomorrow and buy the entire lot in cash. No idea that the broke daughter they were so eager to push out could buy their house twice over and still have enough left to never work another day in her life. I folded the paper, slid it back across the table, and smiled. "Sure," I said. "I'll think about it." My sister snorted. My mother gave a tight, satisfied nod. My father took another sip of coffee. None of them saw the storm coming. I didn't tell a soul when I won. Not my friends, not my parents, not even my ex. It was almost laughable. 6 numbers, 1 ticket, and suddenly I had $14.2 million sitting in a private account under a trust name no one could trace back to me. I knew if my family found out, they'd treat me less like a daughter and more like an ATM with a pulse. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let me give you some history. My parents, Martin and Sheila, raised me on the gospel of family first, which in our house really meant me last. When my older brother Ryan needed college tuition, they asked me, at 19, still working part-time at a grocery store, to chip in a little. That little turned into me covering his rent for 2 years. When my younger sister Lily got her dream wedding venue, who do you think maxed out 2 credit cards to pay the deposit? Yep, me. It was always the same pattern. I worked, they spent. I sacrificed, they celebrated. And every time I tried to set a boundary, I was guilt-tripped into backing down. "We gave you life," my mom would say in that syrupy tone, "so you can't put a price tag on helping your family." The only price tag in our family was apparently my bank balance. So when I checked my lottery ticket at 6:42 a.m. in my crappy one-bedroom apartment and saw those numbers line up perfectly, my first thought wasn't, "I'm rich." It was, "They can never know." For 3 months, I lived exactly the same way. Same apartment, same used Toyota, same microwave dinners. My coworkers had no clue I was worth millions. Every penny I spent came from my paycheck. I let the interest in the account quietly grow while I figured out what my next move would be. Then came the night that flipped the whole thing on its head. My landlord sold the building, and the new owner decided not to renew my lease. I had 30 days to move. I could have bought the entire complex with 1 check, but that would have raised questions I wasn't ready to answer. So I did what I thought was the simplest, most logical thing. I called my mom. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I caught her just before dinner. "Hey, I might need to crash with you and Dad for a while," I said, "just until I find a new place." There was a pause. Not the warm, of course, honey kind. More like the pause someone makes when they're calculating an invoice. "Well," Mom said slowly, "you're just a guest under our roof now. We can't afford to support another adult. It would have to be fair." Fair, I repeated, already feeling the heat rise in my neck. Yes, $1,500 a month. That covers rent, utilities, and disruption. She actually laughed a little after saying disruption, like I was some neighborhood raccoon she had to keep out of the trash cans. Otherwise, maybe you should just sleep in your car for a bit. You're young, you'll manage. I was so stunned I didn't even argue. My own mother, who I'd given thousands to over the years, was telling me to pay them to sleep in my old bedroom or go live in my Corolla. The bitterness lodged in my chest like a splinter. For the next 3 weeks, I went silent. No calls, no updates. I found a realtor, toured properties under my trust name, and within 10 days, closed on a $980,000 home in cash. No mortgage, no bank paperwork for anyone to accidentally see. Just a clean, quiet purchase. 2 days after the papers were signed, I drove straight from the title office to my parents' place. I didn't call first. I wanted them to see it with their own eyes. They were in the living room watching TV. My mom's smile when she saw me was the polite, thin one she reserved for acquaintances. "Hi, stranger," she said. "Finally decided to visit." "Actually," I replied, pulling the thick manila envelope from my jacket, "I just wanted to drop something off." I slid the deed across the coffee table. The gold-embossed sale paid in full at the bottom gleamed under the lamp. My mom's eyes darted over the page, then widened. "You bought a house?" she asked. Her voice was tight, almost strangled. "In cash," I said lightly, leaning back in the chair. "Figured I'd skip the $1,500 a month guest fee." Her face went pale. My dad didn't say a word. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked to the door. "Oh, by the way," I added without looking back, "you might want to check your joint accounts." Because here's the thing. I'd known for years they were siphoning my help money into a shared investment fund they use for vacations, new cars, and whatever else Ryan and Lily wanted. And I'd been quietly listed as a co-owner, which meant I had every legal right to move the balance. By the time I got home, I'd already transferred every cent into a private account under my trust. I didn't touch a dollar of it, just froze it where they couldn't reach it. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 53 missed calls, voicemails from Mom, Dad, Ryan, even Lily, all cycling between panic, rage, and fake concern. I ignored everyone. Then I heard something slide under my front door. A small, battered wooden box. No note, no explanation. Just my mother's handwriting on a strip of masking tape. "For you. Please call me." And that was when I realized this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I wasn't planning to go back to my parents' place anytime soon. After the $1,500 rent stunt, I kept my visits short, polite, and forgettable. But the universe has a way of tossing gasoline on dying embers just to see what happens. It was a Sunday morning when my phone started buzzing nonstop. First, a text from Mom. "We need to talk. Urgent." Then another from Dad. "Come over. Your brother's here too." Translation, Family Tribunal incoming. When I walked in, the air was thick. Mom sat at the table with her serious coffee mug, the one she only used when she was about to make someone feel small. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. My brother Alex was lounging against the counter with that lazy predator grin he'd perfected since middle school. "We've been talking," Mom began, folding her hands. "And given your situation, we think it's only fair you contribute more. $1,500 a month was generous. Now we're thinking $2,000. I stared at her. "My situation? You're staying here under our roof," she said, like she was explaining gravity to a toddler. "If you don't like it, you can go stay wherever." Dad leaned forward. "We're not running a charity." That word, charity, made something snap in me. I'd been quiet for weeks, keeping my lottery win locked up like a loaded weapon. But now they'd loaded the gun for me. "You know what's funny?" I said, keeping my tone calm. "Last week, I signed papers for something." "Big purchase," Alex said, smirking. "What, a used car?" I smiled. "A house." That wiped the smirk right off his face. Mom blinked. "A what?" $980,000, I said. "Paid in full." The room went still. Dad's jaw tightened. Alex leaned forward like he'd misheard me. "That's impossible," Mom said. "You don't have that kind of money." "I do now," I replied. "Won the lottery 2 months ago." Silence. Then Dad laughed, a short, disbelieving bark. "You're joking." I reached into my jacket, pulled out the deed copy, and slid it across the table. Their eyes moved over the bold black ink. "Owner, Samantha." Mom's face drained of color. You didn't tell us?" "You didn't ask," I said. "Besides, I figured you'd just see me as a guest under your roof." Dad's chair scraped back. "If you have that kind of money, you can help us out. We're behind on the mortgage. Your mother's car needs replacing." Alex opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Stop. They froze. You made it clear this house isn't my home, I said. You wanted rent. You treated me like a burden. Now I'm telling you my money is mine. I owe you nothing. Mom's voice sharpened. We're family. Family doesn't put conditions on a bed. I cut in. Family doesn't act like I'm dead weight unless I'm paying them. Dad's voice boomed. Watch your tone. I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. No, you watch yours. Because this is the last conversation we'll ever have about me giving you money. You've drained enough out of me over the years. I'm done. Alex muttered, You're selfish. I smiled at him. Enjoy paying your own bills. Oh, wait, you don't. My mistake. And then I left. No dramatic slamming of doors, no final insults, just the sound of my new house keys jingling in my pocket as I walked out. That night, I transferred the last of my parents' emergency accounts out of the joint bank we'd once shared back when I was helping them during my broke years. Froze every linked card. If they wanted cash, they could work for it like I did. The next morning, my phone lit up with 53 missed calls. And when I opened my apartment door, there was a small, weathered box sitting on the floor. No note, no return address. I picked it up, feeling the weight shift inside. Whatever was in there wasn't light. And as soon as I heard the faint metallic rattle, I knew this wasn't over. The box was small enough to fit under my arm, but it felt heavy. Heavy, like secrets do. I set it on the kitchen island. The brass latch was cool under my thumb as I flipped it open. On top was a stack of family photos. Birthday cakes, Christmas mornings, me holding gifts I bought for myself, pretending to be surprised. All those frozen smiles were a kind of lie. Proof for the outside world that we were fine. Beneath them, a manila envelope. Inside were photocopies of my driver's license, social security card, and old pay stubs from jobs I'd nearly forgotten I had. Every document neatly arranged, as if someone had been building a dossier on me. The kind of folder you keep if you want to take out loans in someone else's name and make it look legal. At the bottom, wrapped in a crumpled grocery receipt, was a brass key. Old, smooth from years of handling. Taped to it was a scrap of paper in my mother's looping handwriting. You'll need this. We can still fix things. Fix things? They weren't apologizing. This wasn't reconciliation. It was bait, a hook disguised as a gift, dangling in front of me to see if I'd come crawling back, asking what the key opened. My guess? A safe, probably holding whatever they didn't want me to find, or whatever they thought they could trade for my forgiveness. My phone buzzed again on the counter. Another voicemail from Mom, her voice tight and breathy. We're family. Families work together. Your father's furious about the accounts, but I told him you'll come to your senses. We didn't mean to hurt you. Just bring the key back and we'll talk. I didn't even listen to the rest. Deleted. That night, I sat in the living room of my new house with a drink I didn't touch, staring at the box on the coffee table. It felt like a relic from a war zone. I had everything I'd ever said I wanted. My own place, my own money, no one hovering over me. And yet the shadow of their hands was still here, reaching through a brass key. By morning, my phone had another dozen missed calls, 3 from unknown numbers. By noon, I had a visitor. Alex stood at the gate, hands stuffed into his hoodie, trying for that fake casual posture he used on women. Look, he started, leaning toward the intercom. Mom's a mess. Dad's pissed. But we can make this right. You've got plenty, he continued. Just cover the mortgage for a few months and we'll forget all this drama. I almost laughed. You mean buy my way back into the family? It's not like that, he said. We're in a hole. You've got a ladder. Don't be cruel. I pressed the button and said one word. Goodbye. By the end of the week, the flood slowed to a trickle. The silence was almost uncomfortable at first, like the background hum of a fridge that suddenly dies. I started noticing the quiet at night, the way I could hear my own breathing. No guilt-laden voicemails, no emergency texts at 2 a.m. For the first time in years, my life shrank down to just me. I unpacked my boxes, filled my fridge with food I actually liked, and set up an office for the investment projects I'd been putting off. I walked around barefoot in my own space and felt like I owned every inch of it. Not just the deed, the air, the peace. 3 days later, a plain white envelope slid under my door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Mom's handwriting. We're selling the house. Don't come by. You wouldn't understand. I read it twice, then tucked it back into the envelope and dropped it into a drawer. If they wanted to burn the bridge, fine. I wasn't crossing it again. But something about that note itched at me. Selling the house. That place had been their fortress for 20 years. If they were letting it go, they were desperate. The key burned in my mind. That night, I pulled the box out again. unwrapped the brass key, and turned it over in my hand. My gut told me it opened something in that house. Maybe a safe, maybe a locked room, maybe the real reason they'd wanted me gone so quickly when I'd asked to stay. And for the first time, I considered using it. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I called my lawyer and told her to proceed with locking down every single financial account they'd ever tied to my name. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Smart move," and promised the paperwork would be in my inbox by morning. By the weekend, the peace had started to feel real. I woke up early, went for runs, cooked for myself. I started drafting plans for a business I'd been dreaming about for years. Without the constant noise of their demands, I could hear myself think. But just when I thought the storm had passed, I got one last hit. A thick padded envelope arrived in my mailbox. No sender. Inside was a bundle of receipts, all in my name. Thousands of dollars in purchases I'd never made. Flights, jewelry, hotel stays. Taped to the front was a sticky note. It wasn't personal. I sat there holding the evidence, feeling that old, familiar rage rise like a tide. They were still trying to justify it, still telling themselves that using me, draining me, wasn't a betrayal. It was just family business. I slid the receipts back into the envelope, locked them in my safe next to the box, and closed the door with a final click. That night, I stood on my back porch watching the sky fade from gold to indigo. The brass key sat on the table beside me. I didn't know what it opened. I didn't know if I'd ever use it. But I knew this. Whatever was behind that lock belonged to the past. And I wasn't going back. 6 months. That's how long it's been since the box, the brass key, and the last time I heard my mother's voice. The calls stopped first, then the texts, then the emails. At first, the quiet felt wrong, like a room where the air conditioner shuts off and you suddenly notice how loud the silence is. But slowly it sank in. This wasn't emptiness. This was freedom. And it was mine. The old family house sold 2 months after the fight. I didn't drive by, didn't slow down if I happened to be on the same road. My lawyer emailed me the numbers. Mortgage paid. Remainder split between Mom, Dad, and Alex. Lily got nothing. She called one night, her voice frayed like rope. They used my name for a loan. I didn't even know until the bank called. I listened, didn't say a word. "You were right," she whispered, and then hung up. That was our longest conversation in years, and the first one where I felt no weight to carry after. The brass key still sits in my safe, wrapped in that crumpled grocery store receipt. Sometimes I catch myself holding it, feeling the grooves, wondering if it opens a safe, a box, or a hidden room in that house. But every time the answer is the same. I don't care anymore. Whatever's behind that lock is part of a story I've closed the book on. And I'm not reopening it. Not for curiosity, not for closure, not for them. It took weeks to cut every financial tie, every shared account, every automatic transfer, every quiet back door they'd built into my money. My lawyer and I went through it line by line like diffusing a bomb. The day the bank confirmed the last account was closed, I stood in my kitchen with a glass of whiskey I didn't sip, staring at the evening light on my countertops. I said it out loud. "You can't touch me now." The silence that followed was better than any toast. The lottery money is still there, still growing. I didn't buy a yacht or a fleet of cars. I bought a lake house, small, quiet. The kind of place where mornings are so still the water looks like it's holding its breath. No one knows the address except my lawyer and one friend I trust with my life. I go there for weeks at a time, phone off, laptop closed. I live smaller now than I ever did when I was broke. And somehow I feel richer than I ever have. One letter came from Mom. Cream envelope, familiar slanted handwriting, like she was trying to make it look important. I didn't open it. Instead, I wrote on a sticky note, "Water doesn't drown you unless you let it." I stuck it on the front and sent it back without a stamp, knowing she'd have to pay to get it returned. Dad never called. Alex sent me a friend request on social media. I didn't even hesitate before ignoring it. Lily sends the occasional photo of her dog, tail wagging, tongue out, eyes bright. I reply with a heart emoji and nothing else. That's the boundary. I've learned boundaries don't keep people out. They keep you in. Sometimes I open the safe and look at the box, not because I miss them, not because I'm tempted to forgive, but because it's proof. Proof that once I let people drain me until there was nothing left. And proof that I learned to close the tap. Proof that I can still care about someone and say no at the same time. Last week, I stood on the porch of my lake house, watching the sun melt into the water. My phone buzzed on the railing. Unknown number. I didn't even pick it up to see who it was. I let it ring until it stopped. The sky shifted from gold to deep blue, and in that change, I understood something. The storm didn't end when they stopped calling. It ended when I stopped answering. I locked the door behind me, slid the bolt into place, and smiled. This time, the lock wasn't about keeping anyone out. It was about keeping myself in. And I knew with absolute certainty, this silence is mine forever.